So we know that only 5% of the people we intercept know they're being trafficked. Think about that. 94.9% have no idea. We have permission of the local authorities to approach travelers. So we're watching, and then we're able to be at those transit stations and look for the red flags of trafficking. We step in a critical moment before they're sold and pull them out. And we've intercepted over 85,000 people since 2006.
Glad you could come here to LeaderPass Studios.
Yeah.
And you and I have a pretty good background together. Have known each other for a few years, I'd say. I'm not going to reveal our age necessarily in that, but dating all the way back to high school.
Yep.
And lost touch for a while, and then now been reconnected, and it's just been a blast to hear about you and your family and what you're doing. So I can't wait to talk about it.
I agree, man. I agree. It's so good to be reconnected.
So tell us about what you do. Let's start with your background, because we've got a combination of ministry and tech, and that's kind of leading into what you do now. But share with us your background.
Yeah. So, grew up in New Orleans, like what you said, and just loved that heritage, and ended up going off to college to study to be a pastor. And I guess originally to be a basketball coach, but then that changed a little bit. And so ended up in the pastor world, ended up in the church world. And I was a student pastor, and then a college pastor, and then a lead pastor, and got asked to be a church starter, and I kind of dove full-fledged into that. I mean, it was kind of it was one of those just really neat opportunities that just kept opening up before me. And we ended up starting a network that spanned across 24 cities. We were really focused on trying to help coordinate business, nonprofit, and churches to love their city together. And then got invited to Nashville, where I ended up being on team with a church family there, one of the larger churches there, that Brentwood Baptist, that was looking to do in Middle Tennessee similar things that we had done in Florida. And so got to do that for a while, and then a total curveball, pivoted and jumped into the tech world. And the reason I did is I wanted to learn blockchain tech and AI in order to come back at some point and help nonprofits and churches to navigate that space and to be prepared for what was coming. Because it felt a bit like a tsunami in some ways, like they were going to get swept away if they weren't really prepared for what that could mean and how it could affect them, both the nonprofit and the church space. And so anyway, long story short, ended up becoming communications lead, content lead for this big tech company out of Singapore. A lot of ghostwriting, a lot of writing and leading in all of their PR and socials and blogs and articles that ended up in multiple places. And
was that all, was that connected at that point to church, or was it purely tech?
Totally tech. And so it was one of those weird, like I was one of the people that would go speak at conferences for the company. So I had been like writing and speaking in the church world and church networking and on disciple making and all this other stuff at conferences and things like that. And then all of a sudden I'm at this NFT NYC event and I'm speaking on the main stage. So just wild stuff like that, or ETH Denver or whatever. But like just really a sweet journey and one of those wild, how did I even get here kind of moments. And
how long ago was that?
This was from late 2020 to late 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fairly recently, but still on the front end of a lot of what we're seeing happening now.
Yes.
Was that back when you were doing that, was it so cutting edge in conversation and thought process that was hard to relate with people, or was it hard to? It was,
but it almost felt at times like we were in an echo chamber because the people that were paying attention to it were all in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yep.
And so as you talk about it, it was clear, and people would make, the joke was when you go to your family at Thanksgiving, what are you going to talk about? Right? Because all you've been talking about for the last 12 months full time is this stuff that no one else is talking about. Right. Yeah. So it was very cutting edge. I would say we weren't in the first wave, which was more like 2016 to 2019. But I kind of jumped in, even though I was paying attention to it then, but I just wasn't working in it. And so then I jumped into it there in late 2020.
Wow. And you didn't say this specifically, but you mentioned you writing and who you've written for, done some ghostwriting. Some pretty big names that we can't say, big organizations that have been recently featured on some big publications that you were helping at that time.
Yeah, it was wild. I was in the airport recently traveling for the organization I work for now, and I turned and saw the face of one of the guys I wrote for on the cover of one of the major finance magazines and investment magazines. And so just one of those wild kind of full circle moments where it's like, oh, okay, wow, I got to write for him, and it would end up in things I would write. This was what was funny about it too. Things I would write would end up in Bloomberg Finance and Yahoo Finance and Forbes even, and and so it was kind of one of those wild. I used to write about Philippians, right? The book of Philippians, and here I'm writing about about decentralized finance and about its empowering ethos and what that can mean and why commerce and community is moving in a different direction.
Empowering ethos. What does that mean when you say that?
It's interesting. Blockchain tech and decentralized finance allow people who are bankless and creditless to engage in the global economy. Because it gives access to a currency that isn't limited by a country or a border. It gives access to a currency that can still interact with like the US dollar or with the yen or with, the real or any major currency, but it kind of crosses into the digital space where we really all live, but most people don't think of it like that.
Right.
But we really all live in this physical digital kind of blend because of all that we do online and all the money that we spend online. And so as those two keep blending together, this is kind of a currency that will enable that. But people who are not currently in a bank, don't have a bank or don't have a credit card, they struggle to interact in that world. And cryptocurrency and blockchain technology are empowering because they allow people who maybe don't have that access to engage there.
That's amazing. So when you were both feet in the tech side and jumping into blockchain a couple years back, what was your mind and your heart doing at that time? Because you came from purely faith-based driven community, and then all of a sudden you were knee deep in this and writing for it. And tell me, was your brain just working that way? Did you just pick it up quickly, or was there a passion connected to that drove you?
That's a good question. Like I said, I had been paying attention to it even as far back, if you may remember when Domino's would accept Bitcoin for pizza.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That caught my attention because I thought, wait, that's another type of currency I had never heard of. And at that time, that was in 2012 or 13, something like that. At that time, I was being mentored by a friend that would probably be labeled as a macroeconomist or a global economist. And because I was curious, like where I grew up and the family I grew up in and the hoods that we grew up and all, were a part of, and the church family there in New Orleans, I never learned that you could make money on money. Like that was a new idea to me.
Right.
And so I started seeking mentoring in that to try to better understand really how does the global economy work? And so in the course of that mentoring, I see this article about Bitcoin and pizza, and I'm like, that's interesting. And so it just kind of registered. I kept paying attention to it. And then in 2017 to 19, I learned a lot more about it. And then in 2020, oddly enough, during the COVID stuff, like all the pandemic stuff, I had a little bit extra time on my hands, probably like most everybody else. And so I just kind of dove in. Like I dove in to try to understand it. And as I would uncover each layer, I kept realizing, oh my goodness, people that like Jesus would have been so brokenhearted to be near to and to empower and encourage and enable and lift them and elevate them toward abundant life. And I don't mean prosperity. I just mean help them find purpose and identity. When maybe they feel like they're hopeless and trapped in a cycle of nothing that they could ever get out of. And all of a sudden I realized this is at the heart of the mission of Jesus. And this is a tool that's going to allow the church to do something they've never been able to do.
And you're talking about specifically
blockchain technology and crypto.
Yeah. How do you compare that? Walk me through that for a second. Why would that be at the heart of what Jesus, draw that parallel?
So the parallel of, say someone is in a bankless society, a creditless society, and they're working their tail off just to try to make ends meet for their family, but they feel completely hopeless and trapped. They feel like I'll never get out of this, right? Which I had friends in inner city New Orleans who even said that to me at times, right? And so whether you're in the hood here in the States, in inner city New Orleans, where sometimes people get trapped in cycles of poverty, or whether you're in an undeveloped country where people are trapped in cycles of poverty, the idea of giving someone a chance to work hard, make ends meet, and then become generous and a life giver themselves, that feels really in tune with what Jesus would want, right? As he elevates someone to become a life giver, to be a part of helping people find resurrection in whatever it is that they feel hopeless and lost in. And so this became a commerce tool. I just was noticing this. Never at any other point in history was there a tool that had presented itself on such an international scale that would enable that kind of empowering to allow someone to move to a different level of income, and then ultimately to move to be not just gain, but to be generous, right? And so that idea was really intriguing to me, and I thought this is a tool that can enable that.
That's fascinating. I think you said a little while ago, Jesus would be for decentralization, and even his ministry was.
It was.
Tell me that. Tell me that again.
So it's so funny, man. Like, Jesus. So he early on, right? I mean, he hadn't even really walked with them long, and he's saying to them, "Yeah, I want you to go out and try, preach this or cast out this day." It's like, and they're all probably looking around, going, "We've never done that," right?
Yeah.
But it was almost like this inductive idea of like, I'm going to immerse you into this kingdom stuff that I'm up to, and you're going to learn it, right? Instead of it being like all about him or all of, and so instead of it all being centralized, and it's people think that's a weird way to say it because it is all about Jesus, but you know what I mean? Like for Jesus, he washed their feet, right? It's this upside down idea that begins to move them to a place of, you get to be involved in the kingdom. You get to be involved in life giving. You get to be involved in resurrection. You get to be involved in helping someone discover their identity, security, and purpose like they never have before. And he tosses the keys to the kingdom of God to them and says, go for it. And then he even says this crazy thing in John 14 where he says, hey, you'll do greater things than me. And they had to be baffled by that, right? Like, he's Messiah. I mean, like, what in the world are you talking about? And I think what he really was trying to say to them is, I was focused here with you. And the implications of what he did touch all of history and all of humanity and all of the world. But he decided to invite us into that spreading, into that tsunami wave, and riding that out to see and take his message out into the world. And it's all about decentralization. And so even today, like, how do you look at a small group ministry, for instance, for a church, and actually help them not keep looking back to a central figure in the church for teaching or for mission, or for, how do you actually give them the power and the freedom and the encouragement and the tools to go do it together and embody the kingdom together?
Yeah, love that analogy, but I love that truth, and that's exactly right. I know there's probably a lot of people watching this that the second they hear some of the words that you're saying, vocabulary at least, I don't mean on the faith side, on the Bible side, but their brains probably shut off because either because of just lack of knowledge or fear, or what they've seen. And there's a lot of fear that's attached to where that's heading. How would you address that, or how would you encourage someone who's like, I'm interested, but they just turn off because they don't know how to think about it? It's a different way.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's valid, because if you Google search crypto, for example, even as recently as a week ago, I think it was, I did, a friend of mine actually did it yesterday to just see what would happen. I mean, you get so many scam, or fraud, you still get a lot of those kinds of articles. And, so at some point, hopefully we'll see that tip in a different direction. But it's valid that people hear some of these terms or hear blockchain and go, yeah, that all feels weird, or I don't understand it, or that's a scam. Or even if you're just in the Christian world, you might even go as far as saying, oh, that's a mark of the beast. Like, who knows how far you'll take it. And that's valid. So first thing I would say to someone is, it's valid for you to think that. but hey, let's look a little closer. Let's see what this really is. Let's see why it was even invented, right? Like, why did the group that invented Bitcoin, for example, why did they do it? And I think it might help someone feel why, like, kind of begin to understand the nature of it. And they did it because they were tired of central banks being the ones who could hold our money as long as they wanted and make as much money on it as they wanted, while they were trying to transfer it from one party to another.
Right.
And they thought, you know what if I could just send you? And so it's different even than Venmo. It's different than PayPal. It's different than like the Cash App, because those are still leveraging central banks.
They're still going through those banks.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
So it's different to be able to say, I'm going to send you a currency that actually has value. And I know it sounds funny, but it almost goes back to medieval times where maybe I raise chickens and you do whatever craft you do.
Yeah.
And then we trade those things to give value to each other because of what it almost is that rudimentary in its mindset. And it's just, we want to avoid all these other central authorities and be able to directly communicate and do commerce together peer to peer. And that was why it was begun.
Yeah.
And so even that has an empowering nature to it, right?
It does,
like
yeah.
You know, and so helping people understand then, because we all live in a digital world now, that the blockchain is simply a distributed network of computers that validate one another's actions.
Okay.
And so it becomes this public ledger, basically. If you think of a private ledger, when you write on paper, I did this transaction, I did this transaction, the blockchain becomes a digital version of that. And all of our interactivity together kind of gets put into a block. Like it gets put into a block that's recorded onto that digital ledger. And so now you can look back and see all of the transactions and the communications and the commerce and the data that we've exchanged with one another.
And it's protected. Somebody can't go in there and rewrite.
Yeah, you
the
can't.
ledger?
It's permanent. Once it's in a block like that, it's permanent.
And I think that may be part of the challenge for people too, is to understand that, we see hackers a lot, in banks, and I mean, really everywhere. To understand that it truly is, how could it really be protected?
Yeah.
How could that really be a technology that's better than your safe, at home, so to speak?
I love that you asked that, because I think the word that gets thrown around a lot with blockchain is trustless. And it's a confusing word, in my opinion. Like the brand guy in me, like the guy who wants to help shape brand or has done that. I hear that word and I go, I don't think that communicates well. But here's what they mean by that. It's the kind of thing that's so out in the open and transparent and public, even though someone may not be able to look at a transaction and say, Jamie sent something to Jason. The public nature of that transaction now being in this distributed network gives it a level of trustlessness or accountability, so that I can just trust, right? You have the money, or your wallet wouldn't have interacted this way. And I am going to get the money because it's coming directly through this chain that all of these people all over the world are part of validating this community and the commerce that happens.
It's almost like you don't need to trust it. I guess
Correct.
that's the idea.
And that's the idea.
Trust is removed.
Yeah. So it's trustless.
Yes.
Right? Like that's
I got you.
And so that's the idea behind it. So I say that to say, when people might feel like, oh, this feels unsafe, or this or the hackers and all this stuff, it's actually probably more of a safe community than you would have experienced before. Like on the open internet, there's actually a lot more opportunity to engage and get in and get information, and
sure,
compared to the blockchain, where a lot of things do remain anonymous. It's just that the interactivity becomes more transparent. So there are companies now that use it to do criminal investigations. There are multiple people who have stolen money through the blockchain that actually got found and returned because of the nature of how it's built. You're able to locate, this is where that went, this is where that went.
You're tracing every piece
of it. And they
can
trace all of it. Compared to like right now, if someone did bank fraud or they did, we wouldn't find it, right? It would be so difficult to find it.
But because it's creating a fingerprint throughout the entire space. So how did they, because we were just talking about it's safe, how could somebody then hack that or take that?
So that's part of what is continuing to be developed. But part of if you sign up, like let's say someone said, okay, I've heard President Trump talk about Bitcoin, and I've heard whoever they listen to talk about Bitcoin, and maybe they listen to CNN or whatever, Fox News or whoever they listen to, and they've heard reports about it. And okay, I've heard about it. I'll go buy some. How do I buy it? Right. And so when they go, they have some options. They can go sign up with a company like Coinbase. And with that, they'll have some what's called private keys and a password and stuff like that. And so the only way you can really be hacked there is if, one, the way Coinbase is kind of still connected to the open internet, someone could come in that back door, but it would be a large scale thing. It wouldn't be just private to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they couldn't just find Jamie.
Yeah. And so, but on the other side, if someone got your password or your keys,
right,
they possibly could then hack you in that sense.
Just like a bank.
Just like a bank. Just like, almost
yeah.
like a robbery, but just less invasive in that sense.
Right.
Someone not coming up to you with a gun, but they somehow confiscated or got access to what your private information was on your computer even. Maybe you were on an open network at a coffee shop and someone found it and then went on and signed on Coinbase, blah, blah, blah. And then there's more private ways to interact with cryptocurrency, with Bitcoin. I won't get in all the terminology of it, but it's basically looks like just a thumb drive or a key or an iPhone. And it's basically a wallet or a drive. Well, think about a hard drive.
Yeah.
And you connect it and so it only connects to the open internet when you connect it.
Okay.
And then you can do your transactions and then you disconnect it. And all of your money stays connected on this thing that you have.
Gotcha.
And no one can even get into it because they don't know the 9-digit code that you have to type in to even open it up, if that makes sense.
Yep. And you just don't want to lose that.
Yeah, you just don't want to lose it. So
yeah,
right.
That's very interesting. So those are this new terminology, new vocabulary, new way of looking at transactions.
Yeah.
The way you're describing that. Take me from there now, and I know we're skipping a lot of what you've done, but take me from there now to what you do currently. With this amazing organization.
Yeah. So I was really blessed. I had the opportunity to interview for this role at a time my dad had actually just passed away. And so we were pivoting back out of the tech world and kind of looking for our next opportunity back in the nonprofit space. And one thing I'll say is I've always been entrepreneurial. So we've started businesses, we've started churches, all that. But I'm at a season, I think, in an age now where I'm pretty hyper selective about what I do that with. And so when I found out about Love Justice and they were looking for a role that it was a VP role that kind of advanced their mission and strategy and advanced their network and their brand and tried to help get the word out. And that's the role I got to step into, which I'm very thankful for. And so it allowed me kind of to bring all of that background, in the DeFi side, which is actually really a meaningful tool in the fight against human trafficking. And then even in the church side, because we, as a gospel-centered organization, we do try to empower the church to be engaged, to do what Jesus said in Isaiah 61 when he said, preach the good news to the poor, set the captives free, right? So how do we engage in that? So this organization focuses on the preventative side of fighting human trafficking. What I don't mean by that is that we just do education and awareness. That's not what we do. We actually put people in pairs at bus stations, border crossings, railway stations, and airports in 20 countries currently. We started in Nepal, but in 2004 we started in Nepal. Now we're in 20 countries. We put them at we put people in pairs at these transit stations, these strategic transit stations, where people are being moved, and so traffickers use these places to get someone from the place where they kind of pulled them out of their community and get them to somewhere where they're so unfamiliar that they could then be sold and have no idea how to work their way back to what they had known, if that makes sense. And so we're trying to step in at that critical moment as someone is on their way to slavery, modern day slavery, whether it's sex slavery, forced labor. There's some more hideous sides of that as well, which I won't get into, but people can ask me later if they want. But there's some really crazy and hideous things that occur on that once they get to their final destination and are sold, right? we step in a critical moment before they're sold and pull them out and intercept them.
Wow.
Pre-trauma.
Physically
there. Pull them out. And we've done that now. We've intercepted over 85,000 people since 2006.
Amazing. How do you do that? How is that done? I mean, is it literally a physical grab and go scenario?
Yeah. So it's really cool. I'll have to get you because this is video, I'll have to get you we had some Bible Project illustrators do a comic strip for us.
Oh, cool. Okay.
To try to put it in simple form, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to see it.
And so basically you work in pairs. Let's say it's a guy and a gal, because typically we try to pair up man and woman because we never know who all is going to be in the trafficking situation. And we have typically there's one country we don't have local authority permission. That's a kind of a long story. But in all the other countries, we have the local authorities' permission to be there.
Okay. Yep.
And so with that authority, we're able to be at those transit stations and look for the red flags of trafficking. It's why our logo is a red flag. And so we have, obviously now having done it so much, we have a large database to help us know what those red flags are and as they're changing. So we're watching. And then we have permission of the local authorities to approach travelers.
Okay.
And so the two may walk up to the travelers and just a quick engagement. It's not, because people get annoyed when you stop them while they're traveling.
Sure, yeah.
So it's a quick engagement. But within about 60 seconds, we can usually tell, is this a high risk situation that we should lean into more?
Wow.
And so if it is, they kind of nonchalantly begin to separate a little bit, where the one person's talking to part of the group, another person talking to another part of the group, or if it's just two individuals, might be a group, might be two people, and able to kind of dig deeper and understand what's happening. And if they realize that it's a trafficking situation, they're able to begin to say to that person that's being trafficked, we can help you right now. We want to pull you out of this, because otherwise it is highly likely that you are about to be taken somewhere and sold. And you'll be surprised at this. Most people are, again, we keep very robust data. So we know that 5.1% of the people we intercept know they're being trafficked.
Only 5.
Only 5%. Wow. So think about that. 94.9%
have no idea.
Yeah. They've been deceived. They've been duped. They were promised something that sounded incredible. And like what we talked about earlier in the blockchain conversation, like they were at a desperate point and didn't have access to something that might move them forward or help them flourish or help them take the next step toward becoming a life giver, but toward being able to be generous. They were doing everything they could just to make it. And someone shows up and preys upon them and says, hey, I think I have a job I could offer you, or I have this opportunity, or, they kind of groom them and pull them into like a love relationship even, and promise them the world, and then take them out of familiarity to a place of complete unfamiliarity.
Wow.
And then sell them.
That's amazing. And that's literally pre-trauma, right before that moment where you step in and do that. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. As people watch this, where can they go learn more about that while we're talking about it?
Yeah, lovejustice.ngo. And we're international, so the NGO piece is what sticks with us. But yeah, if you just go to lovejustice.ngo, you can find a lot of information there, and a place to donate as well, place to volunteer. I mean, there's different ways you can get involved.
It's awesome. So connect the dot for me now to the tech side, the AI side, in this. Like you mentioned it earlier, this is actually a tool that can help a ministry like this.
Yeah, so I'll give 3 examples. One, real brief examples. We a year ago we started scraping social media and job posting sites in South Africa, leveraging AI to assess all of the postings and be able to give it a rating of 1 to 10. And if it's an 8, 9, or 10, we pay attention to it and see who's responded to it. And so not only at all these strategic locations we just talked about, but we are piloting this just in that one country right now to kind of figure out, is this effective? Is this an effective way? Because so many people are scamming with false jobs.
Okay.
and then getting people to respond, and then beginning kind of grooming them through online interaction, and then getting them to meet up somewhere, and then taking them somewhere.
So if it's an 8, 9, or 10, you're saying that job listing
Yeah.
is a candidate for
It very
trafficking.
likely, yeah, and most some of the people watching this will likely have heard of the book When Helping Hurts, right? We're certainly not trying to do harm in that, so we're very careful. We don't want to keep someone from getting a great job, right? And,
Right.
and that helping them. But when we are able to assess that, when AI gives it that rating, we're able to go look into it further, kind of understand what's happening. Is it even a company? Are the wages normal market value wages that are being promised? Because that's a pretty big red flag. When they're like, sometimes they're 2, 3, 4x of what typical market wages are. What's the interaction like? Does that person even that's offering it or has posted it, do they have a background that's trustworthy? And so you can kind of look at those things, and then we're able to reach out to people that have responded to it and say, hey, we just want to educate you on this, and you've got a choice to make, but you need to know that this is a common scenario for trafficking.
Gotcha. So is that all 3, or is that one?
That was just one.
Okay.
So another one that we're exploring right now is the idea of, like, once we've intercepted someone, is there a way to set them up with a blockchain, with a crypto wallet? Is there a way to set them up with a digital identity that allows them to stay connected with other people that have been intercepted in their community? A way that allows us to be able to check in and just say, how are you doing? How can we help? And then connect them to other organizations that can help them.
Yep.
So leveraging blockchain and AI, we can kind of create this digital community that allows them to get the next resources even greater than they currently have. Like, we have partners in all the countries we work in, and they can go access that. But to give them an application on their phone, because many of them will have a phone, or to give them an opportunity to leverage this new opportunity to be engaged in the global economy, and to maybe even get contract work that they get paid in a currency that's not doing hyperinflation. Like, that's an idea that we're exploring right now.
Very cool.
And then the final one is just looking at how, this is a simple one, but how do you move money internationally as an organization, right? Like, we can save a lot of money by moving money internationally through cryptocurrency. And we're going there anyway. Like, there's I won't say the name of it, but there's this stipulation out now that comes into play in March 2026 that the International Monetary Fund is asking all countries to move money through encrypted means.
Really? Wow.
And so think about that. Like, so if all of a sudden every country is moving money through crypto by March 2026, what's the trickle down effect, right? So it will change the way our global economy works, and how do we get prepared for that?
Right. And so I think that's a perfect tie-in to what would be the inspiration for someone watching this to want to, not just out of curiosity, but take this seriously.
Yeah.
And that would be a huge motivation.
Sure.
If in March, is that what you see happening as the next steps?
Yeah. November 2025 was the original date. They moved it back to March. It's possible they could move it back again, but I would say, that the current administration, whether you love Trump or not, doesn't matter. The current administration's focus on crypto is very clear. The Bitcoin and crypto reserve being created, the way they're leveraging AI and blockchain technology concepts to really wanting America to become a hub for that. In a bit, it's a bit of a national security issue. That's a whole other conversation. But, like, because all of these things are now happening, right? We're not just way ahead of the game anymore.
Yeah.
We're kind of at this crossroads moment. And so I would say to people, like, the easiest thing you can do is sign up for a Coinbase account and go to Coinbase.com, sign up for an account, and buy a little Bitcoin just to get your feet wet to understand what this even is.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about Coinbase, and I'm not just trying to highlight, I don't get paid anything by Coinbase. The one thing I love about Coinbase, though, is they've created all these really, really accessible training videos. And so if you don't have to go deep into it, but if you want to just get your head around what this even is, it's all accessible through their website. And that's a healthy next step to take. That kind of gets your feet wet, gets you involved. You now have a little Bitcoin or a little crypto, whatever. and you're kind of going, okay, I'm starting to feel out this space. And I think what you'll find, especially if you are a part of the mission of Jesus, I think what you'll find is that some of the ethos of it actually feels and looks like a decentralized mission, and it feels like a tool that could be used in that.
I love it. I love it. Jason, it's been great having you. I want you back because I'm excited about where this is heading for you and for the ministry, and also watching as our world changes that direction. I think there's a lot of people that probably feel the same way with who to trust, what to watch out for, where to take first steps, which you gave a great one today, and then also how that could intersect with their mission and purpose. And you've done such a great job explaining that, and y'all are doing an amazing job. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Jamie. It's great to be here.
All right, buddy. High five.
Yep.